Stampers, this is Kim with Great Inspirations. Thank you for joining me. Today we're going to talk about using designer series papers or pattern paper, whichever name you prefer. And these particular designs are from a collection of designer series paper from the Stampin' Up! January through April 2023 mini catalog, which is nearing its end here at the end of the month. And this is from the collection called Fancy Flora. And you can see this isn't all of the patterns. This is just some that I've picked out because I may have shown this before, I think. But anyway, these are some of the patterns, and as you can see, there's some that sort of look like florals, and others are just sort of abstract. And then there's some that are just sort of neutral, looks like they've been painted. So I used these designs. And these two I didn't have any more of, so I just had to use the little pieces I had left. But these are the designs that I've used to create some of these cards that I'm going to share with you today and just talk about some tips on using designer series papers as a focus on your cards. Now, I know we've talked about this some before, but there's always some new ideas, and it's always nice to look back at some ideas that maybe we have forgotten about. So anyway, the Fancy Flora is what I've used for these cards, but there are many, many papers that these ideas will work with. So let's get started. I'll bring in the first two cards. And these two are super duper simple. If you need a card in a hurry, just find you some pattern paper. For example, this card, I use this pattern paper. And the way I cut it and turned it, I wanted to be able to have a spot just to stamp my greeting. So I just kept kind of looking at the paper, then I finally cut it, and this is 5 by 3 3/4. And then I had a place to put my sentiment. Now you could have positioned this so that it would have been a portrait orientation and put the greeting here. There are many different ways. You could have flipped it and put it down here, but I chose to put it up here. And this card took under 5 minutes to make. The same with this card. And it is simply, let me get my paper, this paper. I really can't remember. I think it's this part of it right here. And then all I did was I put the greeting on. I did put a mat on this one, the Evening Evergreen, and then I mounted it on Soft Succulent. Now the Evening Evergreen and the Soft Succulent, as well as this fine floral paper, will be retiring very shortly. I think it's like May 1st or 2nd, somewhere along in there. I'll have to check. But they are right now on the retirement list, and they may, they're now like while supplies last, just in case you were interested in purchasing them. But the only other thing I did to these cards was I just put some small embellishments on them, just to give it a little bit of bling. That was all. It took, like I say, under 5 minutes to make these cards. So if you need a card in a hurry, that's a good option to use. Now, the next two cards, or 3 cards, I guess. Basically, all I did was add a few layers and some ribbon or twine and a greeting that is stamped on other cardstock and then popped up on dimensionals. Now for this card, I used this design right here, and I mounted it on some Calypso Coral cardstock. And then I used this design for this other mat, and all of it is on a Calypso Coral card base. And then I've made the greeting 3 layers with the petal pink, the calypso coral, and the soft suede. And soft suede is another one of the retiring colors. Now I just made a little double bow with the linen thread and used a glue dot to attach it. Now on my corresponding blog post for this video, there will be a list of all the supplies and colors and everything that I used to make these cards. So all the dies that I used for this sentiment will be there on my blog. And I will link that blog post in the description of this video. This card, actually these two, are fairly similar. I've just flipped the mats and the card base colors and changed the font of the greeting and the ribbon. Of course, here we have thanks, and let me see if I can find. Yeah, here's the designer series paper I used for these two. And this bow is made, it's a double bow, and it is made with the soft succulent sheer ribbon. And again, that will be retiring as well. And this is the Something Fancy dies that are in the current mini catalog. They will be carrying over. A little soft suede for the sentiment. And all I did on this is I just wrapped two separate pieces of the ribbon around the matted DSP, and then just taped them on the back, and then just put my bow there. And this one I did pretty much the same thing, but it's just one strip of ribbon and the bow. But one thing I wanted to show you was I kind of faked it like I had tied this bow, and I'll show you how I did that. As soon as I find the card that I was going, oh, here we go. We have these pieces for this card. We have a greeting, the card base, and then we have a matted piece of the designer series paper. It's on Pool Party. And I put some fresh freesia open weave ribbon on this. Just taped it on the back. And I have a bow right here that I've made. And so we're going to go ahead and put the greeting on. And it is the Pool Party, the fresh freesia, and calypso coral. And I chose those because those were the colors that were in the designer series paper. Here's some of that calypso coral. So I decided to put this, instead of putting this up here where then the greeting would be there, I thought, well, let's put the calypso coral down here so it's showcased a little more, and then you can see, get a good look at all three colors, because here's the fresh freesia, and of course there's a lot of the Pool Party, and then here is where most of the calypso coral is. So anyway, we'll put our greeting on, because I'm going to use the greeting to kind of figure out where to put the bow. And I think I'll put it right about here. And I only have the dimensionals on the top and the bottom of this greeting. This greeting was cut out with the beautiful shapes dies, and they are also retiring. I have my bow. Now I'm going to need a glue dot. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to take your pick tool, or you can use your scissors or whatever you use to put on glue dots. And I'm just going to fold it over in half and then fold it again. So I just have a little piece. And I'm going to pick up this ribbon and pinch it. I don't know if you can see that really well. Then I'm going to slip this glue dot under there and press. So it kind of pinches the ribbon together. And now I'm going to kind of work with my bow a little bit here and get another glue dot to attach the bow. Okay, and we're going to just put that right there. Let's turn it this way. where that pinch is. And it gives sort of the illusion that you have actually wrapped your ribbon around there and tied it in a bow. My bow doesn't want to do its thing very... There we go. That's a little better. I need to trim the ends. Just a little. I think I still need to work on that bow a bit. It's a little lopsided. But I think you get the idea. And now we can just put some adhesive on the back of here. Attach this to the front of our card. There you go. You have the illusion, just like with this one, that you've tied it, but you haven't. You've just attached it on the back of your card panel there and used the glue dot. So that's that little tip for that. And now we'll move on to some of the other cards I have here. Okay, so these, we'll get all this stuff out of the way. I have two more. Oh, not ready for that one yet. I have two more. And for these, I used this piece for this one. It had some nice light colors in it. And for this one, I was looking at this and I thought, ooh, that just looks so much like ocean and a sky. I don't know what time of day or night, but anyway, that's just what it looked like to me. So that's why I used the Let's Set Sail stamp set and the coordinating punch, the Sailboat Builder Punch. This stamp set is retiring, but the punch is staying, so we'll still be able to build some sailboats. And then this one I used the cup of tea. Anyway, the teacup set that's in the current annual catalog, it is also retiring. And all I did was I just stamped with Tahitian Tide ink. And I added some Pool Party ribbon and a greeting. And it did not take all that long at all. And this one, again, just stamped the greeting right on the paper, as well as the boat. The sails I punched out with the punch with some basic white cardstock, stamped the birds on there. Easy peasy, ready to go in no time. Now, these two cards, I will say this one took just a little longer to make, but not that much. And this one, I wasn't that thrilled with at first, but it's growing on me. I used, let me get my paper here. For this one, I used this yellow, which is on the back of this, which I showed you earlier. And I just stamped on it. This is the background stamp. It's the, oh, what is it? See, I'm starting to forget all the names of these stamp sets. It is, let me see if I can find it real quick. Yeah, it's the Daisy Garden stamp, and it is a background stamp. I just stamped it with Memento Tuxedo Black ink. And then I took some Stampin' blends, or alcohol markers, and I think Old Olive, the light, and I just added a little color to the leaves and stems. And then I took the Daffodil Delight Stampin' Blend, the dark one, and just colored in the centers a little, just to give it a little more color. And then for these are the basic pearls, and I just colored them with a Daffodil Delight marker, the Stampin' Blends, the alcohol marker. And I used the dark Daffodil Delight, put a little bit of ribbon on it. And this ribbon I did just put it around the card panel and tied it in a bow. That's all I did for that one. I wasn't too sure about this Calypso coral that's going through here, but I do like it, and I think it looked better when I used a scrap of this DSP for the greeting, and it has some of the Calypso coral in it, and I just thought, oh, it makes it look, kind of tied it all together. And of course some of this little black and white gingham ribbon, which is carrying over into the new catalog. Now this one was a little more complicated. This one I used the Butterfly Brilliant stamp set and cut it out with the coordinating dies. So that meant I had a few butterflies left over because it's one big stamp. It is, I would call it a background stamp, but then the dies will cut out each individual butterfly. And again, this is another stamp set and dies that are retiring. But I just stamped on the paper, and here's the paper, with the Starry Sky, which is kind of a really dark blue ink, and die cut the images. So I had a butterfly to put on my card. But this is a card, it's the book binder card. So inside I put another little butterfly. But this shimmer paper, which is in the current mini catalog, in order, because it's a little bit thick, and I used a basic white thick cardstock for the card base. So what I had to do, I had to cut 2 pieces so it would open better. And so on my blog it will tell you how wide to cut this piece and how wide to cut this piece. And then of course they're both 4 1/4 long. But then you'll have to go back and cut just a smidge, like less than 1/16 of an inch, just whatever, just a teeny tiny smidge off of either this one or this one, so it makes it easier to open. And I have given you a link on my blog for another blog post that tells you how to make this book binder card. So this is a way you can use your background stamps on certain pieces of designer series paper. Now we'll go to the last 2. And for these 2, I used, let's see, let me get the papers. I used this paper for this one, and I used this paper for this one. And I embossed them. I just put them in the designer series paper in an embossing folder, and I know it's probably really difficult to see the embossing, but for this one I used the Time Worn Type embossing folder right here, and it just left a nice little texture on the paper. And this one, because of the way the designer series paper is made, it looks like it almost had a texture. So, and it was very similar to this painted texture. So that's what I embossed this one with, the painted texture. And when you're holding it up close in real life, you can really see the difference and you can feel it. It's just really nice. Of course, I've just added 2 strips of ribbon here. And on this one, I just put some twine and a greeting. That's all I did for those. So there's those 2. We'll bring all these back in. And then here's the one with the daisies. And with the butterfly. Let's see. What else do we have? This one. This DSP was a whole lot. Let me see if I can find it here in my pile. It is a lot like this one. It looks like you took a palette knife and just put paint on a canvas. So if you look at this, and especially in real life, just after I've stamped on it, I did not emboss it, but it almost looks like there's texture. It almost looks like I had used this embossing folder, the painted texture embossing folder on this card. So I thought that was kind of cool. And then here's our sailboat. And then we have these 3. And then, of course, the 2 that are just so quick and easy, it's crazy how fast they go. So that's just a few ideas of how you can use this particular designer series paper and almost any designer series paper that you may have on hand to make cards that go fairly quick. And also, I think they're very pretty. And once again, you will find all the supplies I use, the cutting measurements, the colors, and you will also all the products that I used, and there will be a little icon to denote the ones that are retiring and will be gone pretty soon, just in case you want to get your hands on them. And the link to that blog post will be in the description of this video. Thank you so much for joining me today, and until next time, stamp happy.